Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We've got David Sirota on. So he caught some really significant comments from one of Biden's top aides saying, basically, we're going to have to go into austerity mode if there is a Biden administration. So that's cool. We're going to dig into that with him. We've got the great Cenk Uygur on to analyze the entirety of the Dem convention and specifically what it means for progressives. And that is, in fact, where we want to start this morning because, of course, Joe Biden accepted officially the Democratic nomination.
He certainly did. So Joe Biden, he exceeded all expectations. The media fawned all over him, but we have to be honest. It was a very good speech for Joe Biden. He hit exactly the themes that he needed to. We have two separate clips from that. Let's take a listen to the first one now.
Character is on the ballot. Compassion is on the ballot. Decency, science, democracy, they're all on the ballot. Who we are as a nation, what we stand for, and most importantly, who we want to be, that's all on the ballot. And the choice could not be more clear.
Echoing President Obama there, very standard, MSNBC kind of what it is, but he exceeded expectations because he didn't really stumble. I mean, he stumbled only one time that I counted throughout his speech, but overall, I think it's the next clip that we're going to play that really goes to show why I think he delivered. And it's because he just offered the sense of normalcy that so many millions of Americans just want to feel, which is that it's like, we're all patriots. We will get through this. Nothing will be solved until we get rid of the virus. I'm like, man, this is like the literal baseline of what you're supposed to do whenever you handle the coronavirus pandemic.
Normal.
But that's what Americans want. Majority of Americans, what's the number one thing they're voting on? Coronavirus. So we covered the poll yesterday. 7 in 10 say they're embarrassed by the U.S. response. 65% say they wish that President Trump had done more. Vast majority of the American public strongly disapproves of his handling of the pandemic.
Majority say the worst is to come.
Majority say the worst is to come. Biden's entire front half of his speech was only corona. And I think that's smart. That is the number one thing that Americans are voting on right now.
And he didn't turn it into this identity issue that Kamala did. Right. I mean, we should be clear, the bar for him was extremely low, but there was really an open question of whether he could even get up and deliver a consequential 30-minute long speech off a teleprompter as it is. But look, we saw lots of other politicians this week delivering speeches from the teleprompter straight to camera that did not go so well. And I also think, the media narrative going into this was that Kamala would kind of be the star. Mm-hmm. Her speech really fell flat.
Oh, it was awful.
It was really off
and
key.
Stilted.
It was stilted. Her tone and her approach didn't match the moment. He brought the right energy of this sort of, the sort of big leadership energy and talked about, I'm the Democratic nominee, but I'm going to be the American president. On the theater of it, he definitely did an effective job. And I think it is a message that, look, they've decided that they're going to plant their flag basically with what is now the MSNBC base, right? The moderates, the establishment folks, and the never Trump people, which means that you have these very sort of high-level rhetoric about unity, about patriotism, about coming together. And I think you're right. I think it does land in this time. Now, I would argue that if you actually had specifics about, hey, we're going to keep you in your house and with the job and food on your table, you could be winning this thing by 20 points. But you're absolutely right that all he needs to do is appear like a normal president who cares about the state of the country. And I think that on the theater of it and meeting the moment and proving to people that he was up to the job, I think he did that very effectively. Let's play a little bit more here because, look, on the substance, let's be clear. If you were harboring any illusions that he was going to offer any specifics or throw a bone to the left or any of that stuff, that is not going to happen. But he did lay out sort of his thoughts about what he would do on day one of the presidency. Let's take a listen to that.
If I'm your president, on day one, we'll implement the national strategy I've been laying out since March. We'll develop and deploy rapid tests with results available immediately. We'll make the medical supplies and protective equipment that our country needs. And we'll make them here in America so we will never again be at the mercy of China or other foreign countries in order to protect our own people. We'll make sure our schools have the resources they need to be open, safe, and effective. We'll put politics aside. We'll take the muzzle off our experts so the public gets the information they need and deserve. Honest, unvarnished truth. They can handle it.
So again, when he said, like, on day one, here's what I'm going to do, I kind of thought maybe he'd talk about healthcare.
No.
I kind of thought maybe he'd talk about, like, maybe UBI, direct payments, something specific in terms of an economic plan. None of that was in there. However, again, look, the bar is so low, people just want someone who's going to take this seriously and do the basics of government to make it so that they can get their lives back to normal. And he did a very effective job sort of making that return to normalcy case.
But I don't want to overemphasize. I want to emphasize one thing. Politically, it was very smart. It is something that people want. But you're right. I mean, look, the lost opportunity here, and I don't even think it's a bone to the left. It's just like any politician should be doing this, right? Be like,
yes,
we are going to guarantee you that you are not going to be kicked out of your house as a result of this pandemic.
Yes.
You are not going to be destitute and bankrupt because of this pandemic.
Right.
Didn't hear a single word of that from the Democratic nominee. Not going to hear a lot of that from the Republican nominee. And I think that that's a big problem, right?
It's a massive problem.
And it's just, I don't.
Well,
again, I don't know where it comes from. I'm so annoyed with the press for being like, what a transformative president and all this. I'm like, look, the guy is saying we're going to have PPE on day one of what, 9 months into a pandemic? Okay,
Great,
I mean,
cool.
okay, great. I mean, truly, but I mean, huge failure from the White House that's even an effective attack to land with the American people. B, I mean, is that the best you can come up with? Come on, we're going to have PPE. That's it?
I think
that's all you got?
I really appreciate you saying, too, that it's not like a bone to the left to talk about economics. Because when you ask people about, like, should there be another stimulus check, it's like 80% of the public that says yes, right? When you ask people,
same thing.
Should we have an eviction moratorium? It's like 80%. I mean, on the unemployment benefit, which was the most controversial part of $600 a week, vast majority of Americans say yes. So, look, I think it is very clear, zooming out and looking at the entirety of this convention, who they chose to feature, who they did not. We're going to talk about this more with the panel. New York Times did a great graphic of, like, the sort of ideology of the various people they featured. There were more Republicans that spoke for a longer time than progressives, okay? You got Bernie. You know, Warren, do you count her as a progressive? I don't really at this point because she abandoned every principle to support Biden. You have Tammy Baldwin, and you had AOC, who, by the way, the DNC didn't even invite. Bernie had to pull her in. That's the only reason she was there. That was it. And on the messaging and who you're trying to appeal to. If you're going to keep together this coalition of, like, never Trumpers and centrist Democrats, you can't really stand for anything. Because you'll lose the never Trumpers. So that is their strategy. And again, he's up in the polls. I think it's a winning strategy, ultimately. But it matters who ultimately you are catering to and who you win with and who you serve. You're not going to get more out of Joe than what he promises. That never happens. From any presidential contender, they never give you more than what they promise. It's not like they get into office and then it's like, surprise, we all get universal health care, you know, or surprise, you're all going to get UBI. So this is the maximal position of what you're going to get from Joe. And that, I mean, we just have to recognize that that's where it is. And if there was any hope lingering that he really did understand this moment at the beginning of the pandemic, especially they're embracing all this, like, no, he really gets it. This is a moment for transformational change. You didn't hear any of that at this convention. This convention was standard issue, aimed at the moderate white suburbanite.
That's right.
The new MSNBC coalition. That's who this is aimed at. I think it's enough. I think he could win a much broader victory if he actually dealt with these economic issues. But you know what you're going to get. If you had any questions in your mind, you know very clearly what you're going to get and what you are not going to get.
And
out of
the
a Biden
other clear thing,
now.
it's dramatically risky, right? So a poll came out of Pennsylvania yesterday, very good poll. Statistically, within the margin of error. It's only 4 points, right? Trump was in Pennsylvania yesterday saying things like, a lot of Republicans don't like unions, but I do. And he's like, I'm fine with it. I was like, well, that's
a lie, but anyway.
I was like, that's pretty interesting to hear. I haven't heard that in a long time.
Yeah, well, his actions speak very differently in terms of who he puts on the NLRB and his own personal business history, but the rhetoric is
But I was like, okay, so the unions is there. Then we're talking about steel. Then he was talking about tariffs, and he was like, Joe Biden left Scranton 70 years ago and he sold out the country. I was like, wow, this is some little bit of a return. Do I think that that's permanently here to stay? I have no idea, truly.
Yeah.
Now, especially now Steve Bannon's in prison, I have no clue. However, that is very vulnerable. He's very vulnerable to that attack, Biden is, in the Steel Town states and in others. And look, there's only 70 days left, but if they actually stuck to that, and if they're within the margin of error, very possible to get knocked off, especially when you don't have a speech which has anything within it that's actually trying to counter those potential attacks against you. So I think he's very vulnerable on that front.
I think he is too. And he cleared this one hurdle of, can you even get up and deliver a speech for 30 minutes that is effective, where it's not, embarrassing, where it's not awkward? He did that, handled it. Very different question of in the rough and tumble of a debate.
That's right.
Especially against President Trump, who very effective debaters had a lot of trouble with, right? Didn't know, because he's just unpredictable. There's no way to prepare for him. You have no idea. He's going to say the most absurd, outlandish things. You just have no idea what to do, right? Is Biden going to be able to handle that? That, to me, is still a really open question. And I think your point is a really correct one, which is Democrats have left themselves incredibly vulnerable by nominating someone with the weaknesses that Joe has and running on this very, amorphous nothing of a platform with very little, with nothing in the way of specifics. I mean, this has got to be the most policy-light Democratic National Convention in history.
Right.
There was really almost no focus on policy. It's very much the same. Trump is bad. They have done a good job sometimes, of focusing on coronavirus, although even there, their sort of gaze is kind of scattered. But I think you are absolutely right to say he is still very vulnerable, and Trump could absolutely get back in this game.
But don't worry, Mike Bloomberg and Pete Buttigieg got a lot of speaking time. So we have a little bit of clips of that, and then let's take a listen.
So I want to ask small business owners and their employees one question, and it's a question for everyone. Would you rehire or work for someone who ran your business into the ground and who always does what's best for him or her, even when it hurts the company, and whose reckless decisions put you in danger, and who spends more time tweeting than working? If the answer is no, why the hell would we ever rehire Donald Trump for another 4 years?
Love makes my marriage real. But political courage made it possible, including that of Joe Biden, who stepped out ahead even of this party when he said that marriage equality ought to be the law of the land. There is a long way to go. But if this much can change between 2010 and 2020, imagine what could change between now and 2030. Imagine what we could achieve, this coalition we are building this very season, gathering progressives and moderates, independents, and even what I like to call future former Republicans, standing for an America where everyone belongs.
Future former Republicans, that's what it's all about. And Bloomberg, be like, why would you hire? It's like, that is the type of stuff where be like, I'm a businessman. We need a businessman to run the country. They used to see at the RNC not that long ago, and probably next week, too.
We saw it at the DNC last time around, too, when they went on the whole, we've got real billionaires supporting us. And they're like, no, why are you doing this?
Take it.
Don't do
Take
it. Oh, it kills me that Pete is going to be with us for, decades to come.
Yeah.
Wonder what administration slot he's going to get.
I think UN ambassador. It's perfect for him.
All right, we'll have more Rising for you after this.